I'm going to show you how I make these magnetic knife blocks. These make great gifts, not hard to make. I did this one without a bandsaw or a router. You can add a little flair to them, you can get creative. This one took a little more time, but it's a mixture of walnut, maple, trimmed out with some purple heart. Whatever you're in the mood for. So stick around and I'll show you how I make them. I start out by just grabbing a piece of wood. It's got some nice grain in it, something that's going to catch the eye. And I mark a couple spots here to give it a rough cut, nothing exact. I'm going to cut 5 pieces of this. 4 is going to be for the block itself, and then the 5th will be for the base. Now, since I'm going to be gluing these together, I'm going to run them through my jointer, make sure I get a real nice flat face and a straight edge. I don't want to see any seams when I glue these all together. I then run all 5 pieces through my planer and take them down to desired depth. Now, depending on what magnet you use, is going to be the thickness of your pieces. I like a bulkier look anyway, so I'm going to leave these about 3/4 of an inch thick per piece. I play with the pieces till I find a nice orientation that I like and get ready for a glue up.
Now, I didn't spend a ton of time aligning up the edges here, making sure there was no overhang, because I'm going to square it later, so I didn't feel like I had to waste any time on that now. So everything's clamped up. I'm just going to take a little break, let them set up, and come back when nice and dry to move on to the next step. So now I'm just going to mark where I want my magnets. I'm going to put 2 per knife. This is a 4-knife holder, so I'm going to put 8 in. I want my overall finish to be 8.5 inches. A lot of bigger knives are 8 inches long, so I'm going to leave myself a little bit at the top just to square it up, a little bit on the sides as well. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to come too close with your magnets because you're going to run it through your saw and square it up later. Now I can't remember exactly what these magnets were called off Amazon, but I'll try to find them. They are very strong. They measure 1.25 inches across. So I've got 1.25 inch Forstner bit. Actually, I got 2 of them, and I'll tell you why. I've got my normal one right here. Now it's got the little point on the top. Now that point is going to prevent me from getting real close to the edge of the wood. You want this magnet to sit real close to the wood without going through. That gives it the most strength. So I bought 2 of these, and the second one, I actually shaved off that point. So I'm going to get started with this one. And then once I get a nice little circle going, I'm going to use this one. The circle from the first one is going to keep that centered. Now I've got my second bit in, the one with the shaved tip. Now this is the one where I want to set my depth. I like to use my little square, very thin, so it's a good reference. Just gonna make it a little longer here. Now I want to bring it down so it just touches that. Just a little bit of drag when I'm pulling that back and forth. Make sure my base is locked in nice and tight. And then drill the rest of the holes the rest of the way.
Now that my holes are all drilled out, I'm going to put the magnets in. You probably don't need to, but I'm going to use a little bit of CA glue here. I just like knowing that everything's nice and tight before I put the wood glue on. I know they're going to stay nice and close to the face of the block and give me the most strength they can get. With the magnets nice and secure, I'm going to put the wood glue on. Gonna spread that all around, adding probably a little more than I need to, but I don't care if it drips out because, like I said earlier, I'm gonna square up the edges later and I'm not gonna have to worry about scraping up any of that glue. Now I grab pretty much every small clamp that I own and put the two pieces together. I'm gonna keep the edges as flush as I can, but it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm gonna square them up later. So I just keep adding clamps, checking for flushness, adding clamps, and adding clamps. Now that everything's glued, I'm going to measure what I want my final dimensions to be. I'm going to remember that I've got a base to go on the bottom, so I'm going to leave that an extra ½ inch deep, and then I'm just going to take off from the sides to get the final look that I want. I'm going to use my crosscut sled and make sure that all four sides are nice and square. I like to give the block a nice little pre-sand before assembling, and then move on to the base. I like my blocks to lean back a little bit, about 15 degrees, so I'm going to set my saw blade with a 15-degree angle. I'm going to use my setup blocks to make sure that blade only comes up ½ an inch. I mark on my base where I want my block to sit, and then I start running through the table saw. I like to do both outside edges of my blade first, and then I can be a little more carefree when I'm roughing out the middle. If you have a dado stack, you can use that here as well. I do have one, but since I'm just doing the one small cut, I decided just to make multiple short cuts with the one blade I already had in, as opposed to switching everything out. I'm going to use a chisel and some sandpaper just to clean up the cut, make sure everything fits nice and flush. I'm going to dry fit everything and then just make a mark where I want my base to end. I'm going to leave it just probably a 1/16 of an inch proud so I can sand up to it and make it nice and flush. Now all that's left to do is glue the base to the block using my clamps. Creepy smile. Once everything's dry and out of the clamps, I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and just fine tune everything. There's always a little piece of glue here or there you need to clean up, but that's no big deal. Then I'm going to grab an oil and soak the block. It really makes the grain shine through when you put a nice little mineral oil on top of this. And it's food safe too. So there you go, a nice easy magnetic knife block holder. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so I can keep making more.